Now about our program this evening. As you may know, women are 90% of the victims of sex trafficking, which is a form of modern slavery. And trafficking is happening right here in Chicago and the suburbs. This program will present victim statistics, how to recognize a victim, methods being used to recruit the modern young women, and what we as community members can do to prevent trafficking. Our speaker this evening is Priscilla Cruz. She's a Midwest prevention advocate at SelahFreedom. SelahFreedom is a nonprofit anti-human trafficking organization based in the Midwest and Florida. Their mission is to end sex trafficking and bring freedom to the exploited through 4 strong programs: advocacy and awareness, prevention, outreach, and residential. And now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Priscilla.
Hello, thank you so much for that introduction. Hi, everyone. I hope you guys are doing amazing this evening and are excited for the next hour presentation on CSEX. So what CSEX stands for is commercial sexual exploitation of children. So just like what was repeated, SelahFreedom is a part of 4 different branches, and I am a part of the prevention branch, which basically is all about educating our youth, community members, local officials, and teachers as well on human trafficking, the different kinds, and then also risk factors to look out for. And then from there, we're able to provide other assistance as well. So we're going to jump straight into today's presentation. So I want to ask first, what exactly is human trafficking? A lot of people think that human trafficking is something that happens only in the movies. It only can happen to, famous people or people that we really don't know, but that's definitely not true. Human trafficking is considered a very violent crime when force, fraud, or coercion is used to try to obtain some kind of profit from it. So human trafficking is actually considered divided into 2 different topics. It's divided into sex trafficking and labor trafficking. Again, it's for the profit of something valuable, and things that are valuable don't have to just be money. It can be considered anything. And just remember that force, fraud, and coercion must be used in order in trafficking to be considered. Now, human trafficking is actually considered one of the fastest growing criminal enterprises in the entire world. It usually generates anywhere up to $1 billion a year just from profiting off of selling someone. So this actually, human trafficking, ties with the second most largest criminal enterprise in the world, which would be weapon trafficking as well. Drug trafficking is another one that's one of the top 3 that it also ties with included. So when we think of human trafficking, we kind of want to think of, well, where does it happen? A lot of people, we don't want to believe that it happens in our backyards or in our communities or at the local schools, but believe it or not, it happens everywhere, anywhere that you can possibly think of where humans are at. Human trafficking, and especially CSEC, can happen. So I do have a list of a few places that human trafficking does happen at. So it can happen at work, at nanny services, online social media, websites, classified ads. Now, as you guys look at this list, some things might pop out and be like very obvious, strip clubs, massage parlors, escort services, truck stops even. A lot of those we see in the media. But I want you to think even deeper about that. If somebody were to go to, let's maybe not say a strip club, but an actual club, and you see somebody that's very shy, standing in the background, not talking to anyone, but there's 7 guys surrounding them, that's going to be a red flag, something that we don't usually think of that could be human trafficking, but it definitely is a sign to look out for. So then what exactly is sex trafficking? Well, sex trafficking is a commercial sexual act that is exchanged for something of value. And remember, this has to be used through force, fraud, or coercion if that person is over the age of 18, making them an adult. Now, if there's somebody under the age of 18, meaning that they're a minor, force, fraud, and coercion do not have to be proven because legally they cannot consent because they're not the legal age to consent. There is no such thing as a child prostitute or, you know, a middle school slut. Those terms just aren't real in our day-to-day lives, specifically because the law tells us that a minor cannot consent to sex. So when we hear of a victim that has been arrested and then charged with with prostitution in general, if that child is 16 years old, technically that's not even a real charge for them because the law tells them that they can't consent. So there's a little bit of laws that we're going to also go through towards the end of this presentation that is trying to get away from these different stereotypes. So what CSEC is that it is child sexual abuse. What it is that it is an exchange of a child for something of value. And it's when somebody preys on a child's vulnerabilities, those weak spots or those things that children don't usually want to talk about because they are embarrassed or they feel bad about them. What it's not is promiscuity or delinquency. When we see children acting out, behaving, or we see those bad children that are labeled, most of the times when we react to something, it's from an action that has happened to us. And this is the same way for children as it is for adults. In order for somebody to act negatively or to act out or look like there's maybe delinquent behavior, well, we should ask something deeper, like, where is that coming from? How are you feeling like that? Did something happen that I can do to help you? And then from there, we're able to get to the root cause. So human trafficking has been a lifelong historical grave human in violation. The reason for this is because it's been happening since really the beginning of time. It started off as slavery. It still continues as a modern day form of slavery, but we don't call it that anymore. We call it trafficking now. But it's still the same exact thing. It is slavery. It is selling somebody for a profit that they're not getting. So approximately 2 million children are exploited every day in the entire globe, so the entire world. And that's pretty shocking to think about. If you think every morning, hey, where have those 2 million children gone? Well, where could you possibly fit 2 million children in the entire world? And then that makes you think, well, exactly, where are they going? Are they in plain sight? So the question is, yes, they are in plain sight. This is a Polaris map from 2019 that shows the concentration of sex trafficking areas. And as we can see, along the borders of the United States, so we're going to have our western border and our southern border, and then our eastern border as well. Those are going to be the highest rates of trafficking due to the travel, due to shipments, so boats and ships as well, so carriers like that. But then also the borders of our United States all have different transportation systems, like busing systems. They have taxi systems and also train routes as well, and highways, expressways. So these are all the areas that people can be transported very easily from state to state. Now, I want us to concentrate specifically on Illinois. So these are some Illinois statistics that I was able to gather to present to you guys tonight. Now, I want you guys to remember or to just know that these statistics are not 100% the exact number due to numerous factors. So these are going to be 2019 and 2020 statistics. One of the biggest factors is COVID-19. Another factor is that these cases are only cases that have been reported to police stations and sheriff departments. So if somebody was at a school and reported that they think one of their students was being involved in trafficking or child exploitation, that is not going to be in the Illinois State Police Statistics data report. And so I'm going to go a little bit through this. So when we think about the entire state of Illinois, in 2019, there were 37 cases reported to local police departments and sheriff departments. Of those 37 cases, 27 of them were resulted in arrests, which is pretty amazing because that number is a lot higher than most state numbers that we see. Now, in 2020, we see that only 23% of those cases were reported to local sheriff departments and police stations. And we think that this is because of COVID-19. And we also know that trafficking has now moved from something that has happened in person to online, where one person or one trafficker can have one victim in person, whereas online they can have multiples, and from different states, different countries all over the world. And that one person now is solely responsible for numerous cases that might not specifically be tried in Illinois. So specifically now I want to look at Cook County. I want to look at that area that a lot of us all reside in or either work in. We know that Cook County is one of the high trafficking areas in Illinois. And in 2019, there were 17 cases reported to the Cook County Sheriff's Department and local policing stations as well. In 2020, there were 17, so just one case had gone down. But this is a little bit interesting. In 2019, only 3 of those 17 cases actually made arrests. And this is going to be due to not enough evidence being presented to prosecutors on the trafficker, or either the victim or trafficker not reporting or being present during cases anymore. So we see that happens a lot. A lot of the time our victims will go and make a report, but something might happen. They're either scared, they feel intimidated, maybe they are being threatened and blackmailed, and they'll pull out from that case or reporting their trafficker to the police department as well. So another statistics that I was able to find are the total amount of victims, traffickers, and businesses that were involved in human trafficking from the year of 2019 all the way to the end of 2020. And we were able to identify 434 victims. We were able to identify 115 traffickers, and we were able to identify 53 businesses that were all involved in some kind of human trafficking. And that can be either sex trafficking or it can be labor trafficking. Now I want us to look at the O'Hare Airport. In Illinois, Illinois is actually ranked the 10th state out of 50 states for the highest human trafficking rate. And then specifically in Illinois, Lake County is going to be the #1 county that has the most human trafficking reports. And then the second is going to be that Cook County area, specifically gearing towards the O'Hare suburbs, only because of the traveling that can happen through the airport. But then also it's very close to our train stations, our blue lines, green lines, shuttle buses, taxi services, all of the local businesses as well. So I just wanted to go through a few different suburbs that I was able to find a lot of different articles about, news articles, journals, reporting cases, and police cases as well. And I just kind of wanted to go through some of them. So we'll start with the biggest one, which is going to be Rosemont, which is just east of O'Hare International Airport. And a lot of sex trafficking in Rosemont happens through hotels. It happens on the street. And a lot of the times our traffickers are in public. We can see them with our own eyes if we just know what the signs are. A lot of cases that I was able to find with Rosemont included the Jenkins case, which a lot of people are known about this case because it was nationwide. The young lady whose body was found in the freezer in a hotel very close to the casino in Rosemont. It wasn't specifically identified as human trafficking, but there was some foul play that never was able to be determined or prosecuted on. For Park Ridge, a lot of sex trafficking happens through prostitution rings and online ads. Park Ridge and Des Plaines, they're really known for police stings, which is where police will go undercover as an operative of a minor and trying to lure in adults who are preying on children. And then from there, they're able to capture them either when they enter a hotel room, when they get onto the parking lot or into the lobby before they are able to cause any real harm. And no, any police stings don't actually involve minors. They just involve adults portraying minors so that they're able to actually grab those different offenders. If we look a little bit more up north in Mount Prospect, a lot of sex trafficking, again, happens through prostitution rings, but also front businesses. So this is when a business says they're a salon, they're a massage parlor, they are a electronic repair store, but in the back, there's something else going on that's not the business in the front. So a lot of the articles that I was able to find did have articles on either massage parlors or salon services as well, whether it's nail salon services or hair salon services. For Des Plaines, again, a lot of trafficking happens through pornography. So that's going to be pornography online, not through advertisement, but just somebody posting a nude photo of them, someone else screenshotting it, and then sending blackmail to them, saying something like, hey, you know, I know where you live, I know what school you go to, and now I have this photo of you, send more, or I'm going to release it to everyone. So that's what I mean through pornography. And then if we look a little bit more south of O'Hare Airport, like Elmhurst and Rosemont, a lot of sex trafficking happens through social media and online ads. So when I say online ads, I mean advertising for some kind of business, either a nannying service, maybe they need a cleaning lady, maybe they need, you know, a driver or a limousine, some kind of work ad where that person comes to that person's home or whatever that work site is, and then the job is flipped and eventually they are being trafficked. A lot of the times, Elmhurst and the Rosemont area also include human trafficking through social media. So this is going to be through all of the media that our kids are on: Facebook, Instagram, TikTok is a huge one right now, and especially OnlyFans as well. So I want to get into a little bit of the legalization when it comes to human trafficking. So there's two laws that were passed in early 2000. One of them is going to be the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, and the second one is the SEDA and FOSTA Act. So for the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, this is basically saying that there is no such thing as a child prostitute. And in Illinois, anybody under the age of Illinois can now not be legally charged as a child prostitute. Now it's known in the state of Illinois. For the SEDA and FOSTA Act, this is going to be a law that was passed through the government, and it is making onliners responsible, especially those who are creating website platforms, responsible for any kind of CSEC that's happening online. So this was really popular when the backdoor page was once a website. A lot of people were able to post pictures online of minors in sexual acts, sexually explicit ways, and there was no ramification or legal action taken against the website owners or the traffickers in general, because the website owners would say, well, they created a profile, they can post whatever they want. Now this act says that if you are the owner and you see this happening and you don't take legal action will now be taken against you. So from this act, a few years later, backdoor page was actually taken down because they were not taking up responsibility for what was happening on their websites. So some of those websites that we're going to talk about are online traps. So social media, apps, chat rooms. A lot of our social medias nowadays all have a DMing or a direct message feature. And it's not just social media apps, but it's also the gaming sites that our children are using, like Minecraft. It can be anything that's on like a PlayStation or a PX box. It doesn't necessarily have to be on a laptop computer or a computer game. It can be easily one of their systems that accesses the internet, and then that way they're able to DM people. Another one can also be searching of ads, and then also help wanted ads. So those are big ones that are all happening around the O'Hare Airport. So those are the ads that I'm talking about for advertising. So because media plays such a huge role in shaping our youth's views, we want to make sure that what they're seeing online is actually age appropriate. A lot of the times, especially in today's age, the media definitely skews and changes the way our children view their boundaries, or how they create boundaries, how they view and create relationships, and then also how they view themselves, their self-worth, and their identity as well. These are just a few different examples of what the media portrays in human trafficking. Now, as we can see, these images, it gets at our heart. We can already tell, like, this lady's being choked. She has a help on her hand. We can see that this is of someone being sold. There's chains down here on the bottom right photo, but this doesn't depict the true reality of what human trafficking is, because we know that it can happen anywhere. It can happen to the little girl that's holding someone's hand walking down the mall, and we wouldn't think anything of it. Or the mom who's playing with the children in the park. We wouldn't think anything of it. But if we are aware of those red flags and those signs, we're better able to pick out those the characteristics or the things that happen with human trafficking. So then why is the demand for trafficking or for children so high? What exactly makes the demand for sex so high? Well, what happens is we feel the demand, adults feel the demand, buyers feel the demand, traffickers do. So this diagram depicts how the demand is being fueled. A buyer is interested in purchasing someone for some kind of sexual act. They go to a recruiter or a trafficker to contact them to schedule that meeting. And then that recruiter or trafficker will bring them the victim. Now, arrows on this slide go all different directions because there's really no one way how the demand is fueled. It can easily be a victim needing a place to stay, and they're going to their aunt's house, who then lets all of their friends come over and they tell them, hey, to stay here, you need to entertain my friends. So now we see that this progress is happening backwards. It's from the victim to a trafficker or recruiter, then to selling them into a buyer situation. So again, this is just where the fuel for demand happens, the different types of roles that are played, and we will go through each role. We'll go through what each role, the characteristics that they have, and the signs to look out for each person as well. So with social media, like I mentioned earlier, if social media is a huge thing that all of our kids are on, we want to make sure that what they're looking at online is age appropriate. But because of the world that we live in today, we see that our sex industry, for some reason, is on high demand. And believe it or not, it's going to be because of the different kinds of media that is put out to children. Not only are adults making the sex industry a high demand, but the ads that they're promoting as well. So we're going to go through some of these. If you guys look on the bottom right, there's a picture. This is a Cuties ad, a Netflix TV ad. And this caused so much controversy before the show even began. Netflix released this poster and everyone was like, what is going on? Minors in sexual positions. It says Cuties, but it's very simple. It's just an ad, a poster about girls in gymnastics. But you wouldn't see that by looking at this photo. Another one can be this very small middle photo of the girl in the pink background. This is a Fashion Nova ad. But we know websites like Fashion Nova, websites like Forever 21, Pretty Little Things, those are all going to be geared towards adult clothing, adult looks. But yet now they're selling children's clothing, posing as adults would, and in the replica clothing as well as adults would have too, sexualizing the youth image versus an adult image. This image right next to it, so this is actually a poster from 1970. So this is going to show the history of how trafficking has just always been there. This is actually just a perfume. It's a perfume poster, but if you look really closely, it says, "Love's Baby Soft because innocent is sexier than you think." Now that's a picture of a child, and the word right above it is sexier than you think. Smell sexier than you think. When you think of children and you hear the word sex, sexier, anything that has to do with sex, it already puts chills up our spines. It's something that doesn't belong together in the same sentence, in the public eye, anything like that, in the private eye, because there's something morally wrong about that. On the bottom right, I think a lot of us have heard about the hit TV show Stranger Things. It was huge on Netflix. A lot of our youth are really, really into this show right now. And when that show first came out, the first season, Millie Bobby Brown, which is the main character, she was actually promoted on a newspaper ad that said, "Why is TV sexier than ever?" Now, at the time that she released that first season, she was 16 years old. Again, when we see a 16-year-old or a youth with the word sexy or sexier or anything that has to depict some kind of sexual image, it already puts a weird feeling in our stomach. But we also know that in order to sell anything in today's day and age, it has to be connected to some kind of sex or sexiness, some kind of attraction. We always hear that term, sex sells. It's so true. And it doesn't mean just in the media, and it doesn't mean just with adult products or clothing. It's with anything. And that includes our youth. And that's really scary and really sad to think about, but that's the world that we live in. And that's the stereotypes that we're trying to move away from. So the presence of adult sex industry is really, really huge in today's day and age. As long as adults are fueling the sex industry with, a lot of strip clubs, sports bars, clubs in general, those front businesses, things that are able to have CSEC at risk, it happens. So where there's a sex industry, which is everywhere, there is definitely going to be danger for CSEC with our children. So here is the progression of the demand for the sex industry. At first, it started with Playboy. It started with magazines, physical photos that you had to go to somewhere else to buy. You had to leave your chair, you had to leave your laptop, your computer, your internet, and physically walk down the street to a store, buy a physical copy of either a movie or some kind of magazine that had your pornography in there. And then as the years went on, and internet got introduced into the world. Now pornography moved from being physical ads to now being online, where you can watch, you can subscribe, you can see things that were pre-recorded. And then in today's day and age, so that 2015 and up, now the progression for pornography or the sex industry has moved even further online to where you can live stream sex acts. You can live stream what you want. You can ask people what you want now. You can pay for things that you want. You can talk to people through ads like Pornhub or OnlyFans now, which is a huge one. And that shows how the demand for sex has just increased, how seeing something physical it just wasn't enough. And now it is to the point where you can just log on to somebody's website or follow somebody on social media and really just see whatever you want, or ask to see what you want, or log on to a live stream and again, see what you want. For some reason, the demand for sex is just never enough. It makes us think, well, what's next? If we already see this happening live online and we know now it's happening in our community, what's next? How can the demand get even higher? So pornography directly fuels CSEC. And the reason being is because a lot of the people that make pornography, the categories that you can go on, one of the categories is going to be minors, or it'll be, girls in school, which are not considered minors, but they're considered people or children, young adults that are just trying to do things in their lives to make their dreams come true. Pornography directly fuels CSEC because it also gives youth a distorted view on what relationships should be like, how to communicate in a healthy way your sexual desires, but also what sex should be like in general. When our youth start watching pornography at a really young age, which we do see a lot of the times this does happen, specifically with SelahFreedom, a lot of our survivors actually have reported to us that a majority, over 90% of them, have had some kind of pornography made of them while they were in the life, so while they were being trafficked. And through research, we have found that youth, so around the age of 11 or 12 is when they're first exposed to pornography. Well, at 10, 11 years of age, if they're saying, oh, this is what women should look like, and this is how they should act when they're in a sexual position, and then they have that thought process throughout their entire lifetime, well, we know that porn is really just a storyline. It's nothing real. It's not something that happens in reality. It's a play or an act that is happening. But to youth, they don't see that because, again, a lot of the times youth don't speak about pornography to an adult. They're embarrassed. They don't want to tell adults that that's what they're doing. But then they're also not getting the real perspective. Hey, that's not real. It's just something to watch. Sex isn't really like that. Relationships aren't like that. And that's not a healthy way to communicate the things that you want and need in a relationship. So what is the root cause of of human trafficking? Well, at SelahFreedom, most of our survivors report being trafficked or being sexually abused as children. Believe it or not, 1 out of 10 children will experience some kind of sexual abuse before the age of 18. And then that means that if they're watching porn around the age of 10 and 11, and then some of those, 1 out of 10, are being sexually abused, it could be because of something they've seen on porn. Maybe an adult introduced it to them. Maybe a peer introduced it to them. It really depends on the situation. But there is no such thing, again, as a 7th grader slut or a 16-year-old prostitute. And the thing with sexual abuse is that it teaches our children really horrible things. It teaches our children that they don't have boundaries, that they lose the sense of innocence. We see a lot of the times the youth that I work with, maybe as young as 12 years old or 13, they know everything about human trafficking. They're basically an adult. They have an adult mentality because they've lived so much, but their sense of innocence is lost. If they're a 12-year-old, they're a child, and we don't want them to think like an adult. We want them to have that childhood that they've always wanted. Sexual abuse can also teach a child how to lose that sense of control. If an adult is always, or if they're telling an adult no, an adult is saying yes, well, they're going to be like, I've got no control because whatever I say, it never goes. That even goes for adults that they do trust, because again, sexual abuse can also change the way a child thinks about relationships. They think, well, this is healthy. Touching me this way is healthy. Talking to me like this is healthy. Keeping secrets is healthy. That's what I've learned growing up my entire life. So why wouldn't I do that with a trusting adult, like a teacher or a nurse? If my parents or a friend taught me how to keep secrets, well, maybe I should keep secrets from everyone because that's what I've been taught. Some other things that sexual abuse can teach children is self-confidence and self-worth. They don't have that. They don't feel like they're worth anything if they can't even control their own body or their own mind or the things that they want to do. Sexual abuse also teaches the children that they're a victim. And if that child doesn't get help, they see themselves as a victim throughout their entire life until they do talk to somebody and get that help that they do need. So one example of the cycle of abuse can be a picture that I have described down here. So we see a child that they can be sexually abused between, before the age of 18. If they're lied to a lot, if their trust and their loyalty is being broken all the time, maybe they'll feel the need to escape or to run away from that bad home or that situation that they're living with because they don't want to keep dealing with that. A lot of our youth, they don't want to be lied to. They want to be trusted and they want to feel like they are a part of something and that they're loved and supported. So when they're not getting those basic fundamental needs that every child needs, they're going to go and look for it somewhere else. If their home life is not stable, if their family life is not stable, one of the things that they might do is run away. Now, with traffickers, we know that within the first 48 hours, so that's 2 days of a child being on the run, they're actually solicited for some kind of sexual act for something of value. If an adult sees a child on the run, they'll be like, hey, I see you're on the run. Maybe you need a home. Maybe you need some food. Maybe you just need somebody to talk to. I can be that for you. And then at the end of the day, they go, hey, no, I gave you what you wanted. Now you need to give me what I want. And this is where they're now sold up to 15 to 40 times in the next 24 hours, that 1 to 3 days that they're approached, which is extremely scary to think about. But that is what happens when a trafficker approaches a victim. I was watching a documentary not too long ago about traffickers and pimps, and they were specifically talking about how they were asked, how do you know who your next victim is? And the trafficker, he was so serious and he's like, well, if I go into a mall and I go up to a girl and I tell her, oh, you're beautiful, and she looks down and she's really shy, she might play with her hair, that's my next victim. Because if I went up to the other girl and I said, hey, you're beautiful, and she goes, oh yeah, I know I'm beautiful, well, she's way too confident. She's very social, she's very confident with herself, her body, and the things that she say. I'm not easily going to be able to manipulate her. So again, it's those vulnerabilities that an adult or a trafficker will look out for. And it's scary because within the first 5 minutes of being in a group of people, they're able to pick out who they will victimize next, just based off of their body language, how they're acting, and the things that they're saying as well. So I want us to remember, though, victims can be girls and boys, both of them, and they can both be trafficked in the same exact way. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through a few different, oh, this just popped up right away. We're going to go through a few different myth versus facts, and I'm just going to read some of these to you because a lot of these are going to be skewed images that people, or skewed ideas that people have of when it comes to human trafficking. So a lot of the times people hear that human trafficking can only happen to girls. We know that's a myth. That's definitely not true. Boys are actually trafficked at the same rate as girls, so it's 50 and 50%. Male youth often engage in survival sex, which is considered trafficking. So this is going to be a myth. A lot of youth who engage in survival sex, it's not considered trafficking because they are trying to survive. They're trying to do something where they want, food, a place to live, and their end game is not to be trafficked at the end of the day. The next one is that there are studies that show that males are homeless at a higher rate than females. This is a fact due to either that youth's background, their family life, or the support system that they have as well. The fourth one will be that males are perceived to be able to take care of themselves. And we hear this all the time. We hear those very stereotypical slang quotes, men don't cry. Men are strong, boys wear blue and green, those are the stereotypes when it comes to a boy. We also hear things like, oh, boys or men never say no to sex. How can you deny a woman? Something like that. But we know that that's not true. Boys have a voice, men have a voice just at the same rate as women do and girls do as well. And then the last one, I've repeated this, that 50% of victims are boys. We know that this is a fact, that women or boys and girls can be trafficked at the same exact rate. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to actually show you a video of how somebody can be introduced just to a trafficker. So this is going to be a short clip based off of a larger presentation that SelahFreedom is currently working on. It's our boys presentation. A little bit of background. This is about a 40-minute video, and it's revolving around a boy named Connor. He's a high schooler. He meets this boy named Mark, and Mark shows him all the great things it is to be an adult. And at the end of the day, he ends up turning him out or trafficking him to other people. Now, throughout the video, we won't see it here because these are just clips of them, but throughout our larger presentation, there's actually adults involved, like his human trafficking team, his counselor at school, the victim survivor counselor in the local police department. Everybody's involved to try to figure out, is Connor being trafficked? And they're trying to figure out what the red signs are, red flags are, what the mom is involved as well. So it's a very interesting presentation. But we're going to show the first part of the video, which is basically how trafficking can simply start.
Don't have any spare 60, mate. You got any spare 6? Excuse me, man. Don't have any spare 60.
Sorry, mate. I've got some in the car if you want them. Trying to give up. All right, they're just going in the bin anyway.
All right. Where are you parked?
Just up there, mate.
Yeah. All right.
I'm Mark. I'm Connor.
All right, so in this video, we see that Mark is watching Connor. In the very beginning of the video, he's just watching him. He's seeing that he's on the sidewalk. He's asking for some money for some cigarettes. He's asking people if they just have cigarettes in general, and people are just walking past him. And then Connor approaches Mark and he asks him specifically, hey, do you have some spare change for some cigarettes? We also see Connor's alone. We know he's a high schooler. It's the middle of the day, which means we can assume he's probably ditching class or school in general. And then also we see, because he's asking for money, there has to be some kind of lack of money at home or in his life in general. And then he's also asking for that money for drugs. So we know that there's some kind of substance abuse that's going on as well. How all of this can relate to trafficking? Well, traffickers will often watch their victims before they approach them. They need to find out their habits. Where do they go? What do they do? Who do they talk to? So that they can be able to quickly start some kind of conversation that makes both of them relatable. Youth in the life who often skip school and isolate themselves are at huge risk for trafficking because of those vulnerabilities. There's a youth alone in the middle of the day. Obviously, the school doesn't know where they're at, and obviously parents don't know where they're at. So that's another huge reason why traffickers will often approach people or youth who are by themselves. And then the last one is that traffickers will often try to learn that person's want or needs. He saw that Connor needed cigarettes. He saw that he needed money. He's like, hey, I've got some in the car. Come and join me. And so he actually got him to follow him to the car, a stranger. But because he had something in common with him, he was able to prey on those vulnerabilities. So now this is the second video. This is going to show how grooming happens. So the grooming process or the befriending process is that will be the process or the stage where the trafficker will do everything that they can to build that trusting relationship with their youth and build that bond, that really strong bond with them.
I hate my schoolmate. My teacher today, she kept talking about all the homework and where I've been and all this crap. So you know what? I just walked out at break, sod the old bag.
You didn't tell her you were coming here, did you?
No, I didn't tell her. She thinks she knows everything at school. Screw you, Mrs. Elvey.
Oh yeah, I'm having a party here tomorrow night if you want to come. You can stay here if you like. No, the buses are crap after 11.
Yeah, sure. I'll tell my mum I'm staying at my mates.
Right.
Yeah.
And yeah, but at least the party too if you like.
For keeps, really?
Yeah, well, come back to see you in the most scruffy ones, and I figured if your mum's not going to sort you out, I might as well.
Jeez.
Don't worry about it.
All right. So in the grooming process, we see that Connor is confiding in Mark. He's telling Mark about his school life and how, his teacher sucks and he doesn't have nice shoes. And he's basically just telling him and venting all of the things that are going on. And we also see that Connor's lying. He's lying about where he's at, who he's with, and what he's doing. We also see in the video that Mark gives him a lot of gifts, like drugs. He's rolling up a cigarette. We see that he invites him to parties and that he gets him brand new shoes. He tells him, oh, hey, if your mom's not going to hook you up, I'll hook you up. Well, that is what traffickers will do. If there's a void or something that needs to be filled in that youth or that victim that they're preying on, they will make sure that they can fill that so that it feels like, hey, that person got me that and my parents couldn't even do that. I'm going to trust that person more. Again, trying to form that trusting and bonding relationship with their victim. And their end game is to isolate the victim so that they can have that total control over them. We also see that Mark offers Connor a place to stay. He tells him, hey, after the party, you can just stay here. You'll probably be drunk anyways. And Connor's like, yeah, definitely, I'll stay here. So he's also lying about where he's at, where he's staying the night with as well. So how does all of this relate to trafficking? Well, traffickers will often befriend their victims. Again, they'll try to form that friendship or relationship, depending on who their victim is, again, to try to build that relationship with them. And youth will often lie for their traffickers. So we don't see it in this video, but at one point, Connor's mom does meet with Mark, and she lets the principal and his social worker knows, hey, I met with Mark. He's a really nice guy. He didn't know anything about Connor skipping school, and he doesn't know where he got the gym shoes from either. So we see now that not only is the youth lying for Connor, or not only is the youth lying for Mark, but the trafficker themselves is also lying about the situation and about what their victim is even doing, or what the things that they're doing for their victim. Traffickers will also make the life seem great. There's parties, there's drugs, there's girls and guys involved. You can skip school. There's all the kinds of lavish gifts that you can get. And that is going to be the myth. That's going to be all part of the grooming and befriending process, because they can't tell you the reality. They can't go up to you the first day and be like, I'm going to sell you. They can't do that because they're not going to get anybody. So they have to play this fake relationship. To a trafficker, the relationship is completely fake. They have an end agenda. They have a intention for doing what they are doing. To a victim and survivor, that relationship is so real, that love is so real, that connection, that support, that family bonding, it's so real for them, especially if they have never had that before. Then they're gonna feel, wow, I've gotten it for the first time. I can't do anything to let it go. So here's gonna be our last video. This is actually gonna show when Mark does introduce Connor to the life and trafficking.
This is Connor. He's new. He's 15. Now you know the rules. No marks, no evidence, no damage. If you like him, we can arrange a more intimate meeting in a few weeks.
All right. So in this video, we see that now Mark and Connor are at a party. They're making friends. He's socializing with a bunch of people. He's doing drugs, drinking and smoking. And then at the very end, we see that Mark actually turns Connor out and he does sell him to somebody else, a party goer who is at that party exactly with him. So how does this relate to trafficking? Well, youth will often not realize that they're in the life until it's too late. Connor never picked up on the signs throughout the entire video or throughout the entire time that Mark was grooming him, because he just thought, hey, I've got a friend, a really good friend that's looking out for me. And his parents, his parents don't believe him. And when you tell a youth, no, you can't do that, for some reason in their head, if they really feel so strongly, I'm going to do that. And then also traffickers will drug their victims in order to maintain that control over them. In the video, we know that Connor actually doesn't realize that he is being raped up until maybe a few months into it, when he starts actually feeling the effects of the drugs that he has been given. We also see that there's a lot of emotional and physical trauma that leads with human trafficking. Human trafficking can lead to different kind of health diseases like STIs. It can also lead to violence, whether it is physical, emotional, spiritual, all different kinds of violence as well. So let's go through the last part of our myth versus facts then. We now know males are more likely to, are males more likely to disclose. We know that this is a myth solely because boys and men are looked at to be strong. When they disclose something like this that happens to them, a lot of the times they're not believed. Sometimes they do disclose it and they're turned away, which is really horrible, or they're made fun of and they're made to feel embarrassed for what happened to them. Males are often trafficked by a friend, mentor, mother figure, or spouse. This is very true. We have learned through our own survivors and through the youth that we work with that they're more than 90% of the time trafficked by somebody they already know. Whether they start a relationship with someone and then 3 months later they're trafficked, they know that person. They know their names, they know what they're doing, they might know where they work, where they live, what cars they drive, all of that. So that is actually a true fact. We see the movie Taken. That's a really big movie. It's a snatch and grab situation where that dad, he sends his daughter off to Paris with a few of her girlfriends for a trip, and all of them are trafficked. He goes out there and he rescues them. Now that snatch and grab trafficking situation is only about 10% of the case. We think of, and back in the day, we always used to hear, watch out for the guy in the white van. The white van is very scary. That is not the case nowadays. It definitely happens. It's only about 10% of the time though. Most of the time our victims are going to be trafficked by someone they know. So here's the third one. Males showing signs of trafficking is often mistaken for disruptive behavior. This is very true. We see boys acting out, fighting with people, cursing, not acting in a nice way. And we just think, oh, they're a delinquent, oh, boys will be boys. We always put those stereotypical terms with them. But again, in order to react to something, there has to be an action that happened to you. Here's the fourth one. The term toxic is more likely to be used with males. And this is definitely true because we also think only traffickers can be males. And that's not true. Traffickers can also be victims as well. We think that only men can do horrible things in the world, but we know that's not true. Women can also do horrible things in the world as well. There's women that are being arrested for human trafficking as we speak right now. And then here's the last one. Males that are trafficked are part of the LGBTQIA+ community. And this is a myth. When a boy or a man is involved in human trafficking, for some reason, the stigmatism is, oh, they have to be gay or they have to be part of the LGBTQIA community. And that's actually not true. A majority, over 50% of them, are actually not part of that community. They find themselves straight. But when we think about our LGBTQIA+ youth, that basic need for community, for family, for support is so strongly wanted in this community that oftentimes they will run away just to find a community that accepts them, to find people that are behind them and supports them as well. And the youth that are a part of this community are at even higher risk of being trafficked because of the vulnerabilities that they have. So then who is at most for CSEC, for being sexually exploited with our children? Well, again, really anybody is at law or at risk, but these are just going to be a few of the specific ones. Those that the youth that have mental health issues, who maybe have lost a parent, maybe who are involved in the foster care system, who lack supervision, that's a huge one, or who have an abundance access to technology. We know having all that power is not good, especially if we don't know what to do with all of that power as well. So here are some of the signs for human trafficking when it comes to a victim or a survivor. These are what to look out for if we're talking to our youth and they're lying about their age. Maybe they're dating somebody much older than them, or they don't even want to talk about the person that they're dating. If our youth have cuts and bruises on them, if they're forced to keep some kind of secret, if they're distant or isolated with their family and friends. Also, if they have some kind of strange tattoo, which is known as branding. We will go over that in a few slides. And then the last one is also if they have lots of gifts and lots of money, maybe numerous hotel cards, and then also if they're running away or skipping school. These are all going to be signs to look out for. I'm not saying that a youth has to have every single one of these signs, and I'm not saying that every one of these signs is directly related to human trafficking, but a majority of our youth we have seen have most of these signs. And if we're able to pick up on the signs, we're able to ask the correct questions, which we will also go over in another slide. So then what exactly does a trafficker look like? Again, we think traffickers look like this. This is the stereotype. We think of that classic 70s, 80s, 90s pimp, the fur jacket, the animal print, the nice pimp hat and the pimp cane. But we know nowadays traffickers look nothing like this. In fact, they look the complete opposite. They look like this. They look like just our regular politicians, our regular food court workers, our regular, bus drivers. They look like anybody in the world. And remember that they can be men and women. So if a trafficker looks like that, then what does a buyer look like? Again, we think about that white van, and most of the time we think about the creepy white guy that is going to be the trafficker, but that is not the case. Traffickers look like this. They come in all different sorts of sizes, races, ethnicities, backgrounds, genders, all of that, even educational backgrounds, professional backgrounds, everything. In these pictures, we have a priest that is photoed. We have a teacher that's photoed, a nurse as well. So that shows that really anybody can also be a buyer, not just a trafficker or a survivor as well. So these are going to be the statistics on who traffickers can be. Again, if it's going to be somebody that we know, then we want to know who specifically can it be? Well, we can see the largest majority of our youth that are being trafficked is actually going to be by someone in their family, a family member, a sibling, an uncle, an aunt, parents even can definitely be one as well. And then the second highest person to traffic someone is going to be a relationship. So a girlfriend, a boyfriend, some kind of romantic partner. And then we see that the least one, again, is going to be those strangers, those people that we don't even know, that we've never talked to or seen in our lives. So here are going to be some signs to look out for then for a trafficker or an exploiter out in public. A lot of the times a trafficker will ignore boundaries. They'll ignore social, emotional, and physical boundaries. When someone says no to them, they generate in their head and they go, that has to be a yes then. They also use very belittling language and terms. They want to make sure that the child either feels like an adult or feels like a child, depending on how their maturity level is. They'll also be using some kind of guilt, shame, threat, or coercion to try to manipulate that youth. They'll also be usually dating someone younger than them. Again, a trafficker won't want somebody of their age or older because they need to have that manipulation and control factor, which is much easier with youth than it is with adults. They will also, if a person is turns to a child for emotional or physical comfort, that's going to be a big red flag, because we think of somebody, an adult, talking to somebody their age, or a therapist or a counselor, not going to a child for advice or a concern. Also, when they try to control every situation, buying really expensive gifts, trying to or promising that they'll solve all the problems in the world for their youth, that's a huge, huge red flag. A youth that's also, or a person or adult that's extremely jealous or has very high emotions. Also somebody who encourages their youth to run away or encourages bad behavior or negative behavior. And then the biggest one is that our traffickers, it's not on here, but we have noticed that that traffickers will actually try to form some kind of relationship with the parent, with the adult in the youth's life, so that the adult doesn't suspect anything. Just like that boy's video that we went over, that Mark, he actually does talk to the mom. He lies to her. She believes him because he's very charming. He's easy on the eyes and he's a very smooth talker. So she doesn't think anything of it. But that is what traffickers do. That's their job, is to be as smooth as possible, as to be as unnoticeable as possible. But the thing with the trafficker is that they will flaunt everything they have. They won't do it in public, but if you sit next to them, they'll let you know the mansion that they have, the Rolls Royce they have, the money, the jobs, everything, but in a very nonchalant way. Just basically, again, trying to make simple conversation. So then how exactly do traffickers lure our victims in then? Well, they lure them in with the false hope of promises, the false hope of love, of security, making money, having a job, having a family, a home life, protection, this adventurous, glamorous life. Remember, they need to make trafficking look beautiful in order for them to trap their victims. But in reality, we know that traffickers will continue that control with some kind of violence, threats, drugs, or intimidation. And this doesn't have to be directly towards their victim. It can also be towards the victim's loved ones, like family and friends as well. So if it's so bad, then why don't youth just leave? Why don't youth just run away? Well, there's this form of control that is so strong over youth, and it's not over, it's over everything, mind, body, and soul. It's over the way they think, the way they act, the things that they say, how they talk, what they want in life. If that trafficker keeps telling that youth, hey, I love you, and they've never heard it before, in their mind, they're going to think, well, this is the only person that loves me. He shows me he loves me by doing this. It's got to be true love then. Another one can be body control. There's only so much that a person's body can take, especially as a youth, to the point where you'll just feel numb. Things will just happen and it's out of your control because we don't feel that motivation or the goals to get up and do and get away and do the things that we want to do in our lives. So I did talk a little bit about tattooing. So this is going to be known as branding. This is another form of mind, body, and soul control. And the reason being is because if somebody has a physical marking on their body and they look at that every day, they're going to think, they're going to relive that. Even if they look at it for a quick 10 seconds, in that 10 seconds, they relive the last 10 years of everything that's happened to them. But they don't relive just the negative things. They relive the things that they think are good as well, like the love, the relationship that they formed, the communication, the friendships, the money that they got. But we all know that that's fake. That's not what really happened. So this is going to be a video of a actual survivor talking about her process of being branded.
He branded me. He made me carry his name for years. Took everything away from me. I fell in love with a man. But in fact, he was actually my trafficker. He began to control me. And soon I discovered he never wanted a family with me because he already had one. He sold me to many clients. I was only his business. I was trafficked all across Europe when I ended up in UK. I felt alone. But in the end, God made a plan for me to be free again. Today I feel stronger, but his name has marked me beyond my skin.
You're not just fixing a tattoo, you're helping fix that person.
The branding process is something that's not very well known within the modern slavery community. It's a control mechanism that's put in place by perpetrators of modern slavery to control their victims, to identify them as belonging to them.
What's happened is never going to change, and it's something that she's going to carry, but we've changed it and given her the power to rewrite what that meant.
This slide is going to show just a few examples of real branding tattoos that have been actually marked on survivors. And any person who is permanently branded or is directed by a person that has been branded is actually considered a second-degree felony. You cannot brand somebody to show ownership or property and control over them. That can be known as a form of slavery, and it's illegal. You can't brand somebody and force them into permanently putting something on their body. So there are a few different tattoo agencies that will actually host a survivors day where any survivors are allowed to come in, and they're actually allowed at no cost to get their tattoos covered up, which is amazing that these tattoo agencies and parlors do something like that for our victims. That's amazing. So one thing that mind body control and especially branding can do to someone is it can cause Stockholm syndrome or trauma bonding. We actually had a youth that had their boyfriend's name tattooed on them, and then the very next day they went from being a girlfriend to being the trafficker. But because she wrote "I love" and then the person's name, she looked at that every day and it reminded her she loves him. She's going to continue doing this because she loves him. But that was his mind, body, and control, that force over her. And that makes a victim think, well, it's trauma bonding. It's what I've always dealt with growing up. It's what I'm dealing with now. I'm just going to live through it. And honestly, yeah, he's my trafficker, but he was my boyfriend first. So it's okay. They justify and give explanations for why it's okay for their trafficker to do the things that they're doing to them. This is known as Stockholm syndrome or bonding, where they feel a connection, a deep connection to that trafficker. So here are going to be then the do's and don'ts for understanding a victim. What we do want to do is we don't want to be judgmental. We want to make sure that we listen to our victims and survivors with an open ear and a really clear thought process. We want to recognize their trauma and the history that they've gone through, and we really want to listen to what they're saying. Follow-up questions are a huge thing. How did that make you feel? What did you go through? Are you okay now? What are you thinking? Those are the really important questions. What we don't want to do is freak out. We don't want to scream and yell at them. We don't want to curse, especially. We don't want to judge them. And we also don't want to take over the conversation with our own personal stories or things that we've heard or a friend's story that we've heard because we want to keep it focused specifically on that survivor. We want to focus on them and help them and their needs and what they've been going through. So this is going to be a few different questions, just some kind of pointers that you can ask for, specifically with coercion and money. So if you want to know specifically things that might be going on, like with force, you can be asked, well, were you allowed to be alone? Did anyone physically abuse you? Were you told to take those drugs? Like, those are different ways to ask a youth, instead of saying, hey, were you forced into doing this? Because they're going to feel, wow, you're already judging me from the bat. We want to make sure we tailor the questions in specific ways that still feel sensitive for the youth. So that is going to be the end of today's presentation. This last slide does have just a few resources for everyone. It does have our intake number if you do know any youth or adults that might be experiencing some kind of exploitation or human trafficking, involved in human trafficking, you can definitely reach out to our intake number. We also have the National Human Trafficking Hotline and the Cyber Tip Line. Both of these can be texted or phone called in anonymously, or you can let them know who you are. And you basically just call them, let them know what's going on, the location, what you've seen, what you've heard, day and time, and then from there, that division will actually take over. Either if it's a case, they'll bring it to law enforcement, or maybe something that DCFS needs to get involved, and they're able to better take those precautions. And that's the end of the presentation.
Well, thank you, Priscilla. Maybe you want to leave that last slide up.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the questions is, do you bring this type of program to high school students?
Oh, definitely. We definitely bring all of our presentations. So this is actually just the CSEC presentation. This one's not shown to students because they've got like 5 different other presentations. We have one called Sex, Lies, and Media that's all about healthy online media use. We have #relationship goals that talks about healthy relationships, toxic relationships, boundaries and standards we should set. We also have something called Freedom for Teens, which basically goes over everything about human trafficking, all the definitions and the roles that are played in there. And then we have another training called Caught Up. And that training is going to be a video-based training that is solely looked at trafficking. It actually is our most trafficked training. And we do provide trainings in schools, local communities, group homes, really anywhere that either reaches out to us or we reach out to them first.
Do you offer this type of program to PTOs of middle school parents? I mean, people that kind of need to be on the alert and maybe need more information.
Yeah, most definitely. So we just did a parent presentation not too long ago for a local suburb that we had gone over, and it was a huge turnout. So we do trainings for youth, we do trainings for professionals, for parents, and for teachers as well. And we are located all throughout Illinois. So we're able to travel as far as East St. Louis, down south, and as far north as Waukegan, Frankfort, Freeport, Rockford, really anywhere that they need us.
How do you get the police to understand what you're doing?
So we actually are part of a coalition, specifically with the police station. So Cook County actually has their own SVU unit, their own trafficking unit that deals with all of the trafficking cases. And someone in part of that unit is part of the coalition, the Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition for Illinois. And from there, we're able to directly talk to that police officer that maybe might relay things to their department or the state department. And then they find out more about the different agencies throughout Illinois as well. But specifically, the police departments do get trainings as well when it comes to trafficking. Yeah.
So would you recommend going to the local police first or to a county officer?
I would say local police. It really depends on the situation. It depends on the case. It depends on if that survivor is a victim, or I'm sorry, if they're a minor, if they're an adult. And then from there, it depends. If they're a minor, like with me, I'm a mandated reporter with DCFS. So if a minor ever discloses anything to me, I automatically under the law have to let DCFS know first. And then from there, they'll either direct me to let police officers know, or they might just take over the case in general. Now, if there's like like just a community member that might think something is a little odd, or maybe they see one of these red flags that are happening, I would say call 911 right away. Even if it's something that you're not 100% sure, but it just kind of looks a little odd, call, because you never know what that situation might be. We actually had a bunch of cases come out of south of Aurora, Naperville area, and as far north as like Rockford and Freeport, where traffickers were writing on the back of cars symbols. So they might write 1 lowercase b, 2 uppercase G, which means 1 boy, 2 girls. So 2 uppercase G's are going to be women. And that's for traffickers to know, okay, that car specifically has 1 youth and 2 adults. How hard is it going to be to traffic them? That's been reported all throughout, or well, mostly up north in that Lake County area, and then that southern, like Aurora, south of Aurora, Naperville area. Yeah. But call the police if anything.
Well, recently there was a story about this hand signal that victims can use.
Yes.
Is that well known, or is that something sort of new?
It is new, but it is a trend. It's not well known, but it is becoming well known. I think in the next few years, people would know what that means. A 6-year-old in Arkansas was actually able to be rescued because someone saw that little girl making that hand signal, and that adult just happened to be on Facebook reading the news about what that signal meant. And then she saw it and she's like, well, you know, does that actually, she wasn't sure, but she called her local police department just in case. And that youth was trafficked. She was actually taken that same exact week. Thankfully, nothing happened to her, but she was able to be rescued just by that 1 symbol. So a lot of people, if you see something that looks like this, thumb on the inside, 4 fingers together, going down like that, or sometimes they'll just keep their hand like this, that is usually going to be a sign of some kind of trafficking going on. And it is known to traffickers. So those who are actually involved in the life, they know about that sign, that signal. Mm-hmm.
So that would be something you might see if you're in hotels or even at a Cubs game.
Yeah.
Or the arena concerts.
With those areas, since they're so highly populated and trafficked with the population, I wouldn't recommend just approaching that person who's making that signal. I would always make sure that you have some kind of law enforcement involved before, because you never know how that situation can play out. But definitely that's a big one. Those sporting events is a huge area that trafficking happens. Hotels is a huge area, and then big business areas and agencies as well.
Are the Rosemont police especially trained for this kind of thing, since there are so many big venues?
Yeah,
the convention center.
Yeah, definitely. The Rosemont local PD, they do go through trainings. I think all police officers in Illinois are required to go through some kind of human trafficking training, just so they know what the signs and red flags to look out for, but also how to proceed when they get cases like this as well. So yeah, they are involved whenever there's a case in Rosemont. Their police station's really close by. So usually they're on the scenes relatively quickly to try to handle that matter.
And what about the Rivers Casino? Do they have any special security that's looking for this kind of abuse?
I am not 100% sure, only because if those security officers if that's just like a job ad and, you know, they just need security background, but not law enforcement background, they might not be required to do those trainings. But with casinos, especially like the one that you had mentioned, trafficking does happen a lot of the times in those casinos. Again, our vulnerabilities are at the highest when we are under the influence of drugs and alcohol. So we might not pick up on the red flags, and we might not notice that person who's gambling has a 14-year-old next to them. Like, those are just things that we might not notice because of the environment we're in and the substances that they're being used. Mhm.
And the lighting.
And the lighting. Yeah.
For
Definitely.
this, anyway, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'll give people a few minutes if they think of another question. The other thing I was going to comment, the video clips were the volume was quite low.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if you can put some links in the chat, perhaps where people could view the video
Definitely. That
afterwards.
that boys video, I will actually put the link for the entire video. It's about 30-40 minutes long, but it's so educational and it's really informative when it comes to boys and being trafficked. So I'll add that one. I'll add the branding video as well.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting and certainly impactful.
Yes. Let me grab these
The other area that we're probably not very knowledgeable, other than TikTok, what are some of the social media that are up and coming that we might not be aware of?
I don't want to say this, but it's going to be OnlyFans. That is like the really big social media platform right now that a lot of our youth are using, a lot of our young adults are using. And right now with OnlyFans, there's a lot of speculations about what's going on with the pictures, with the age of consent, all of that, because a lot of people are upset. They think OnlyFans themselves, the person who actually created OnlyFans, technically they are a trafficker. They're looked at as a trafficker because they are obtaining all of this sexually explicit images, letting people profit off of them, and then they receive a portion of the cut. So if we want to look at legal definitions, yes, OnlyFans is a trafficker then, and the people that create the pages are going to be the victims, and then the people that buy them or subscribe to the pages are going to be the ones that are fueling that demand. So OnlyFans is a huge one. Also, our gaming sites, so Minecraft, Fortnite, those are usually the games that like our younger youth are on. But we have seen almost every year some kind of trafficking case comes out of all of those online apps. And remember, those gaming sites are not just on our laptops or on the TV. They can also be on our phones. And we know our youth are on their phones almost all day long. Between the ages of 10 and 12 years old, youth spend about 6 hours a day online, and that's just for personal use. So that's just playing video games and being on social media for 6 hours a day on a gaming site. I would wonder who they're talking to and what's going on. So that is another a few apps to look out for. And then TikTok. So before TikTok, TikTok was actually named something else in early 2015, but it was, they got rid of TikTok because human trafficking cases kept coming out of TikTok. And then a few years later, recently, they rebranded, renamed, and then launched again. And now it's known as like a short clip site instead of what it was known as before, which was like just posting videos and stuff. But even till this day, we still see trafficking coming out of TikTok as well.
But TikTok and OnlyFans, that's where the victims would be posting videos of anything, and then they are paid per view. Like the more outrageous, the more views, the more income.
Yes.
Is that how it works?
Yes, that's exactly how it works. With OnlyFans, it's somebody very like me. I just go online, I create a page. Maybe I'll just start by posting pictures of my feet, and I'll put that as like one of my categories is like a feet fetish. And then what happens is people will pay to subscribe for a month. My page costs $10 a month. 100 people subscribed, I've gotten that much money. And then they're able to, I can like live stream just kind of like this. And if people are chatting me, oh, I want this, this, and this, I'll DM them, okay, it costs this, this, and this. And now they're getting live specific services of what they want. And the thing with OnlyFans is that it is giving our youth a really skewed view of what boundaries are. They think that the media doesn't change our boundaries, but if we see, okay, we started off with foot pictures, but we see that, you know, the other two girls' websites are getting so much more money because they've got breast enhanced. Well, I'm going to go get my breast enhanced now too, because I can make more money. That shows how social media is pushing our youth's boundaries, but they don't see it as that. They just see it as them moving their boundaries because they want extra money. But eventually it goes into the point where now they are selling themselves online or showing sexually explicit images. There's a great documentary about this. It's called Selling Sexy OnlyFans on Netflix with Bella Thorne. And it talks all about OnlyFans and how to get started. It goes through a few of the girls and boys who are on OnlyFans, what they do on their pages, the money that they get. And then it also talks to OnlyFans, like people who run the website. And it asks them, you know, how are you keeping these kids safe? Well, they sign a contract when they start. It's just a click of yes or no. I'm over the age of 21. And then they're further pushed into, well, how do you know? And they really just sit there and they're like, you know, it's what is it? I hope they're telling the truth, basically. That's a really amazing documentary to watch because it shows also how youth's boundaries and their standards are manipulated and pushed through social media. And then it also shows how youth view other people, how they view sex and how they view relationships. And it's today's kids. So it's going to be today's that term millennial or our younger age, our younger adult group.
We have another question. Can you speak about the National John Suppression Initiative in Chicago?
Yes. So that has been something amazing that I've been following for the last few years. So that usually happens around June or July, and it's a day full of Operation Stings. So I talked a little bit about that during the presentation. Local police departments, either maybe the state as a whole or local departments individually, will operate different stings throughout the community to try to lure in future predators and try to stop them or get them off the street before. And every year it's a massive, massive turnout. Just this past year, Illinois actually teamed up with 12 other states, and they were able to make over, I think, 400 arrests and be able to identify over 400 victims and over, I think, 300 traffickers as well, which was amazing. Florida also, so our home state, for SelahFreedom, they also have their own human trafficking operation rings as well, or their John Days. Mm-hmm. Great question.
Another question, do you combine efforts or connect with other organizations like thorn.org?
I have not connected with thorn.org specifically, but yeah, SelahFreedom does definitely connect with other agencies. We want to know kind of like what everyone's doing, what presentations are doing, where our youth are at, just in case if one school got a certain type of presentation, we want to make sure that we're not double doing the presentation, because we know that youth lose focus after hearing the same thing over and over again. So we love making different agency and community connections. And I will drop my email just in case anyone does have questions later on. Please feel free to email me.
Also, can you put in the chat the name of the documentary?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, about selling on OnlyFans.
And then, okay, so it is called Selling Sexy, and it is called.
Well, this has been very informative and scary and certainly motivating.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we've recorded this so we can review, but it certainly is a growing problem that we all need to be watchful and supportive of our young people.
I am getting
Thank you
that.
so much for sharing all your information.
Thank you. I hope everyone has an amazing night.